Hello everyone, welcome to our channel Easy Explanation. In this video tutorial, we'll be learning about the concept called as a constructor in C++. What is constructor, what are the use of constructors, and what are different types of constructors. So these are the topics that we will be discussing in this session. Let us first understand the definition of constructor. So constructor is a special member function of a class that is called automatically when an object is created. So constructor is nothing but it is a special member function of a class that get called automatically, or that is called automatically when an object is created. So due to this reason that the reason is that is automatically called when an object is created, we'll be using constructor to initialize the object. So constructor is used to initialize the object. What do you mean by object initialization? So object initialization is nothing but object initialization is a process of assigning the value to the attributes of a class. So we'll be using constructor to initialize the object. So initialization is nothing but it is a process of assigning value to the attributes of a class. So the definition of constructor is it is nothing but a special member function that get called automatically when an object is created. Since the constructor get called automatically when the object is created, we'll be using constructor to initialize the object. So there are mainly three types of constructor. So types of constructors are, so the first is default constructor. So default constructor get called automatically every time when an object is created. So that is the reason we call it as a default constructor. It get called automatically whether the constructor is defined or not. It get called automatically when an object is created. Another is parameterized constructor. Parameterized constructor means the constructor that have some argument passed into it. So that is nothing but a parameterized constructor. And another is copy constructor. Copy constructors are nothing but they are used to create a clone of a given object. So if you want to create a clone of an object, or if you want to use the object or given object to initialize the data member of another object, in such scenario we will be using the copy constructor. That is the reason why I have written something like copy constructor are used to create the clone of a given object. So three types of constructor: default, parameterized, and copy constructor. So what is the syntax to define a constructor? The syntax to define a constructor is nothing but constructor is defined with a name similar to the class name. So let us say if the class name is student, so the constructor will be simply called as a student. See, since we are not passing any argument, so this become a default constructor. So default constructor get called automatically when an object is created. So this is default constructor. Now another concept is a concept of parameterized constructor. So if constructor accepts some argument, like the constructor is a student and it accepts some argument like int a comma int b, something like this, then this is the example of parameterized constructor. We can create another type of constructor called as a copy constructor. So copy constructor are used, since copy constructor are used to create the clone of an object, what we will do is copy constructor accept reference of a given particular object. So student ampersand ob is a, so you can see we'll be using this object to initialize another object over here. So this is the example of copy constructor. So copy constructor always take reference of a given object as a function parameter. Now you can see all the constructor are of the same name and different parameter. So this is also the example of overloaded constructors. So student, this first constructor do not have any initial parameter assigned to it. Second constructor have parameter, and third constructor also have a parameter, but it accepting the reference variable of a object. So constructor with the same name and different arguments. So this is also called as a overloaded constructor, or the concept called as a constructor overloading. Constructor with the same name but different parameters. So this is the example of constructors. Now let us understand this concept of the constructor by writing a demo program related to concept called as a constructor. So I'll be creating a file called as a constructor underscore demo.cpp C++ program to understand the concept of constructor. So hash include IO stream using name space std. Let us create a class called as a rectangle. Let us define some private data member for rectangle class, that will be int length and int breadth. Now generally what we'll do is, like, if you need to initialize the length and breadth, we'll be creating a public method. Let us say the one of the method is void set length int l and length is equals to l, and void set b breadth is equals to b. You can see we have used the same concept in the previous classes also. Like, we have a two attributes for rectangle class, length and breadth, and now to initialize this data members length and breadth, we are using the set method, set length and set breadth. So this also works perfectly fine in order to initialize the data member. So if you want to do like this, we can do something like int main. Let us create a rectangle object, rectangle obj, and we call the method something like obj dot set length 10 and obj dot set breadth 20. Here we have used set length and set breadth method as an initializer for length and breadth attribute of a class rectangle, or for the object obj we have used set length and set breadth method to initialize the attributes of obj object with this set length and set breadth method. Now according to the concept of a constructor get called automatically when an object is created. So why not to use the constructor to initialize the object instead of writing this set length and set breadth method? So what we'll do is, we'll delete all these things and let us try to initialize the object obj by using the concept of a constructor. For that, let us define a constructor rectangle, and since this is not accepting any types of argument, this is the example of default constructor. Let us say default constructor initialize the object with length is equals to 10 and breadth is equals to 20. Now whenever the object is created, the default constructor get called. So in order to verify that, let us say I've written a cout something like default constructor get called indel. So we are simply creating an object obj, and when an object is created, constructor get called. So let us verify this statement first. So g++ constructor demo.cpp and /a.out, and you can see in the main function we have just created an object. So when an object is created, default constructor get called, and we are getting the output something like default constructor get called. In this way we can verify this statement. Constructor is a special function of a class that is that is called automatically when an object is created. So you can verify this statement like this. Now if you want to print the attribute related to this particular object obj, let us say I have defined a method called as a int get length. It should return length attribute, and another attribute called as a get breadth, and it should return breadth. Okay, it should return the breadth. Now if you want to print the length and breadth of object obj, then you can call something like this. Length is equals to obj dot get length, breadth equals to get breadth and L. Let's write return 0 also. Now if I'll compile and run this code, I'll get the output like length is equals to 10 and breadth is equals to 20. It means our constructor has helped us to initialize the object obj by calling the default constructor, by using the default constructor. So this is the example of default constructor. So this is the example of default constructor. So this is the block related to default constructor. Now let us understand the concept of a parameterized constructor. So in this case, any object that we create now, let us say rectangle object obj or rectangle obj2, all the object will be now, since the default constructor get called, so the both object obj and object obj2 will have the same dimension, length equals to 10 and breadth is equals to 20. So in order to avoid that, so you can verify this by using something like this, like obj2 object will also have the same attribute value related to attribute value as obj object, obj1 object. So if I'll compile and run this code, you can see both the objects have the same attribute, length equals to 10, length equals to breadth equals to 20. So how to initialize the object with the user defined values? How to initialize the object with the user defined values? For that, what we'll do is we'll define a constructor called as a parameterized constructor. So parameterized constructor also have the name similar to the default constructor as a class name, and in this case we'll be using some extra parameter in the constructor. So int L and int B. Now we'll be initializing length is equal with L and breadth with B. Now this is the example of parameterized constructor. Now see out parameterized constructor get called and L. Now let us create object obj2 using the parameterized constructor. In order to call parameterized constructor, you can do something like this: 15 comma 25. Now for this case, default constructor get called, and for this object obj2 parameterized constructor get called. So now obj2 will now display another set of values. See, I can see default constructor is called when this obj object is created. Parameterized constructor gets called when object 2 is created, and it is initializing the object with the value 15, which is the length, and 25, which is the breadth. So you can see for object 2 we have got the output of a length as 15 and the value of a breadth as a 25. So this is the example of parameterized constructor. So this is the example of parameterized constructor and default constructor. This is default constructor and this is parameterized constructor. We have defined some extra method, get length and get breadth, in order to print the values related to that particular, or length and breadth related to any given object. Now another constructor that we need to discuss is the copy constructor. As you can see, copy constructor are used to create the clone of a given object. So how to do that? So one more thing, the copy constructor accepts reference of a variable as its argument. So let us understand this concept by writing a demo program. So copy underscore const dot cpp, the C++ program to understand the concept of copy constructor. So has include IOStream using name space std. Let us use the same concept. Let us create the same class rectangle to understand this concept. So we'll be creating clone of a given rectangle object. So class rectangle, then create a private attributes, it length and int breadth. Let us define a public constructor. Since constructor need to be called outside of the function, this should be declared as a public. Remember that outside of the classes, so we need to define all the constructor as a public constructor. So let us define a parameterized constructor, int l comma int b, and now length is equals to l and breadth is equals to b. Let us use the same methods, get length and get breadth, in order to print the length and breadth associated to that particular object. So int get length and int get breadth, put semicolon aware. Now once this is done, let's try to create a object of rectangle class, int main and rectangle r1 with 15 comma 25, cout length is equals to r1 dot get length, breadth is equals to get breadth. Okay, we have just created object r1 of type rectangle class. So g plus plus copy dot slash a dot out. You can see we have created object r1 of length is equals to 15 and breadth is equals to 25. Now let us create a same object or a clone of object r1 which have, and it will also have a same attribute value as r1 object. So how to do that? For that we need to create a copy constructor. So we'll be using, let us create object r2, and r2 will be initialized with the attribute value of a r1. r2 will be initialized with attributes value of r1. So we are trying to create object r2, and r2 will be initialized with the object of a, or the attributes of the object r1. For that we need to create another set of constructor which is called as a copy constructor. For that let us create a reference variable for r1 object. So it will be nothing but constant. It is similar to reference variable that we created while learning the concept of a pass by reference. Rectangle ampersand obj. So we have created reference for r1 object which is the obj object. Now obj and r1 both are pointing to the same memory location. Now obj and r1 both can access the same value. It is the meaning of that. Now let us initialize the object r2 using the attributes of the object obj, or using the object's attributes of the object r1. Now length is equals to obj dot length, and breadth is equals to obj dot breadth. Now you can see, since we are calling this parameterized since we are calling this or creating the r2 object with reference to r1 object, our copy constructor get called. So our copy constructor get called here. Now since we are calling this constructor with reference to r2 object, so this length refers to r2 dot length, and this breadth means r2 dot breadth. Means since we are calling the copy constructor with r2, this length and breadth is related to the r2 object. So r2 dot length get initialized and r2 dot breadth get initialized in this copy constructor. So we can verify this by running this code one more time. See out clone of object is created now. And we can verify this by printing the attributes value for the r2 object. So r2 dot length and r2 dot breadth. Now since we are calling copy constructor at line number 25, now r1 and r2 both will print the same values for length and breadth. So you can see, after the clone is created, the new object r2 also have length of 15 and the breadth of 25, similar to the r1 object, which has the length of 15 and breadth is equals to 25. In this way you can use the concept called as a copy constructor. So copy constructor are nothing but they are used to create the clone of our object. So in order to write the copy constructor, what we need to do is we need to pass the reference of our object as the constructor parameters. So in this way copy constructors are used in order to create the clone of a given object. So we have discussed about the default, parameterized and the copy constructor over here. Okay. Now let us write another program to understand the different way by which we can initialize the data member of a given class by using constructor. So for that I will be creating a file called as a demo underscore init dot cpp C++ program to understand different styles to initialize objects. So hash include IO stream using namespace std. Let us create a class called as a point. Let us define a private attribute int x, int y, and let's define some public constructor. So this is point, this is the default constructor, x is equals to 10 and the value of y is equals to 20. Let's define a parameterized constructor now. Point int a comma int b. Now there is another way to initialize the data member of a class. By using this concept, you can use colon, then x of a comma y of b. This will help you to initialize the value of x and y by using the parameter value of a and b. So this is another way to initialize the data member of a class. So you can use this technique. So this is the instance variable and this is the local variable of constructor a. constructor constructor point, and this is the instance variable y, and b is a local variable for constructor point. So in this way, by using this colon and by using this method, you can initialize the data member of a given class. So this is another technique to initialize that. Now let us just write a method called as the display that will display the value of attribute value of a given object of a class point. Void display cout x is equals to x, y is equals to y int l int main. Now let us say if you are creating a object of class point p1 3,5, and if I am calling the display method with respect to p1 object, let us see what will be the output over here. Now let us run this program again. G++ demo underscore init and /a dot out. So this is another way, another way to initialize the data member of a class. So you can use this technique, or you can simply use this technique in order to initialize the data member of a class by using the parameterized constructor. So this is also parameterized constructor, but you are using different styles to initialize the data member of a given class. So these are the concepts related to constructor concept in C++ programming language. So if you have any question regarding it, please mention in the comment section. Now let us discuss some of the multiple choice question related to concept of a constructor. So which of the following is true about the constructor in C++? Constructors are used to create object. So answer A, or the point A, is the correct answer. What is the purpose of default constructor? To initialize the object with the default value. So we have also verified this thing, or this statement, by writing code. I hope everyone of you understood that. Which of the following is a valid way to define a parameterized constructor in C++? So the valid way is constructor and data type parameter. So answer D is the correct answer. Which type of constructor is called when an object is passed as a parameter to function? So we know that it is called as a copy constructor. So copy constructor are used to create clone of a given object. Which of the following statement is true about the copy constructor? The copy constructor is always automatically generated by the compiler. Copy constructor used to create copy of object. It cannot have any parameter, is used to deallocate the memory. So the answer is B. The copy constructor is used to create the copy of an object. So and that is what happens if a class does not have a user defined constructor. The compiler automatically generates a default constructor is a correct answer. So if you have not explicitly defined a constructor in our code, then our compiler will automatically generate a default constructor for us. Which constructor is called first in the process of object creation? So obviously the answer is default constructor. Can a class have a multiple constructor? Yes, a class can have multiple constructor, which is nothing but a concept of a constructor overloading. Which constructor is used to create an object by initializing it with the values of another object? The answer is copy constructor. Which type of constructor is automatically called when an object is destroyed? So it is called as a destructor. So we'll be understanding the concept of destructor in the next tutorial. So the answer for this is the destructor. So destructors are used to deallocate memory created for the given object, or simply we can say that as constructor is used to create the object, destructor is used to delete the object. So these are all the concept related to concept of a constructor in C++. If you have any question or queries, please let us know in the comment section. And thank you so much everyone, and please like, share and subscribe our channel. Thank you so much.